Morning. We are at the K on Bays 95B. One, two, three, 4 lines up from where the lines are narrow. So you go to the top set of narrow lines and count 4 lines up from the bottom of that narrow set. The line begins with the word David, and then started Shrid Uplit, and then the 4th word is Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Have it?
Yeah.
Okay. The Gemara now gets back to the discussion of Sanhedrin and Chizkiyahu. Right? Just to give you an idea of the train of thought, the Gemara began, of course, with a discussion on Mashiach's coming, because that's the topic here, the resurrection and Mashiach's coming. And from there we mentioned that God wanted to make Chizkiyahu the Mashiach. There was an intention there, there was an idea there, which we talked about. And along with that comes the war of Gog and Magog. The prophecies talk about the great war of Gog and Magog, or Gog of Magog. And there's somewhat ambiguous prophecies about it. And the Gemara mentioned there that God wanted to make the war with Sanhedrin, where he came and dispersed the 10 tribes of the north and attempted to attack the south. It failed. Miraculously, as we described, that was going to be the war of Gog and Magog. And we talked about how the implication of that is that the war of Gog and Magog, and likewise Mashiach's coming, is like a historical cycle that repeats itself. And that it's part of the process of Mashiach's coming. There's like this war of Gog and Magog and there's Mashiach personality. It could have been Chizkiyahu, and it's going to be in the future time. So today's Gemara is going to get back to Sanhedrin, and in a certain way be similar in that. That's why I'm giving this introduction. It can be similar in that pattern of showing the historical repetitiveness of this messianic process, which includes the battle with Sanhedrin. With the battle with Gog and Magog, and Sanhedrin was one such option for battle, if you will. So on that note, the Gemara is going to discuss here, and the Gemara is going to discuss many details of Sanhedrin's army, and the fact that it's been repeated throughout history. And on the surface, of course, the details of which seem to be, they're details, and they're interesting maybe in and of themselves, but they seem to be like arbitrary. Like why would one care that much? You had this amount of soldiers and it lasted this long. It took up this much space, all these kind of details. And what kind of soldiers? So I'm obviously going to translate it literally. I don't necessarily have the answer to what the deeper meaning of each one of these numbers and things are, but I'm just putting it out there that there certainly is deeper meaning. And maybe as we go along, I'll share a little bit here and there of what I can think of.
You were saying last week, though, I think that sometimes there seem to be these arbitrary details, but they have deeper.
Right. So I mentioned that when you see like the details and the surrounding that seem to be arbitrary, and you ask what they are, it'll point to a deeper meaning. So I think a similar thing will happen here. I don't have the answers, but I'm just going to put that out there. Okay, so let's get to the literal description of the details the Gemara talks about with respect to Sanhedrin's army and its repetitive nature throughout history. In terms of, it seems it's in terms of the Gog and Magog pattern. This great war, this difficult time that precedes Mashiach's coming. Some of the Marav, this is the name of Rav. Baalim Sanhedrin Harasha. Sanhedrin, the wicked one, came upon them, upon the Jewish people. First in the north, and then his attempt in the south. Barboyim v'chamisha elef ish, with 45,000 men. B'nei malachim, all of whom were of royal descent, children of kings, 45,000 sons of kings. Yoshvim b'kranes shalzav, sitting in golden chariots, v'imam, and along with them, shegloinos v'zoinos. They came along with professional women. Put it nicely. Shegloinos actually translates as malchus. I don't know what it means, but Steinsaltz translates as consorts, different forms of professionals. So, 45,000 princes, sons of kings of royalty, carrying each in a golden chariot, it seems like, and they each came along with professional entertainers. Okay?
Sounds like too many chiefs, no Indians.
Something like that, I don't know.
That's not what I heard, but okay.
V'shmonim elef giborim, and then 80,000 strong men, levushe shirya and klipa, wearing scaled armor. That is, if you look at the old armor, there's one type of armor which is just a plate of metal, which is because it's that which is strong cracks instead of bending, right? If you're not right, so if you make an armor, which they used to do out of scales, so they would string together little pieces of metal.
It's more flexible.
Yes, it's more flexible. It absorbs the blow rather than tries to stop it. And if you're strong enough, you pierce through it. But if you have this scale thing, it absorbs the blow more. So 80,000 men wearing such scaled armor. There's probably a word for it. I don't know what it is.
A mail.
It's called a mail?
Coat of mail, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
As in like M-A-I-L?
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to finish this and I'll tell you a little bit of what I think might be embedded here. Vashishim Elef, and then with 60,000. Achuzei Cherev, carrying spears, swords, spears, I guess swords. Rotzim Lefana running towards them. So what were the other guys doing? I don't know. But these guys are running. Vashar and the rest of them, no number. Prashim are cavalry on horses. So very specific numbers that so I said why does it matter? But it's very specific. The Gemara makes a point of telling it to us. And the Gemara's going to give a different option and a different option. So obviously there's something more going on here, but this is the literal thing. 45,000 princes with golden chariots and professionals. They're maidservants. And 80,000 men with scaled armor, with mail. 60,000 men running with swords, and the rest all cavalry. V'chein, and the same exact same number. Bo came al Avraham to Avraham Avinu, the famous battle when Avraham himself with Eliezer with with Lot, fought the four kings.
Actually, rescue Eliezer.
With Eliezer.
At 318, yeah.
He's rescuing Lot. He had four kingdoms he had to fight. They were also made up of the same number with the same breakdown. And the same thing is going to happen with Gog and Magog. That's why I mentioned this repetitive nature of the messianic process, already beginning with Avraham Avinu. Avraham redeeming Lot, and then Sanhedrin and Chizkiyahu, and then Gog and Magog with Mashiach coming. So, obviously, this is further indication of the fact that these numbers have deeper significance. So I don't have the answer to exactly all these things, but I'll just give you some ideas that I do know that could be related. First of all, in terms of numbers, I don't know all the numbers and what their significance are, like 80,000 or 60,000, but 45 is one of the Kabbalistic names of Hashem, Shem Ma. You count, when you calculate God's name in numbers, in Kabbalah. So God's name, Yud, Hey, Vav, and then Hey is 26. But then there's something called Milui, which even you take the letter and you spell it out into a word. So the letter Yud, which is just 10, it's one little Yud, you spell it out as Yud, Vav, Dalet, totaling 20, right? 10, 6, and 4. Now, when it comes to the name of Hashem, you have two Heys and you have a Vav. So Hey, Vav, and Hey can be spelt in different ways. So Vav, for example, could be Vav, Aleph, Vav. So you would spell it out as a word, making it 13, 6, 1, and 6. Or it could be Vav, Yud, Vav, making it 22, right? 6, 10, 6. Or it could be just Vav, Vav, which is the most common way, which is just 12. More specifically, there's the Hey. The letter Hey can be spelled with Hey Yud, making it 15. The letter Hey can be spelled Hey Aleph, making it 6, or Hey Hey, making it 10. And depending on how you spell the letter, the name of Hashem, you have different numbers. And they represent different names of Hashem. So in Kabbalah, they don't even mention, they'll say Shema, the name of Ma. Ma means 45. Now what they mean is, the name of Hashem is broken down to the number 45. So it could be this is related somehow, because it's 45,000. I don't know what the 80 and the 60,000 are, but that could be one thing. Another thing I can point out that might help you percolate some ideas is this idea of the scaled armor, the mail. So the Alter Rebbe connects the idea of there's a pasuk which talks about Kovi Yishu B'Roshai, Lavish Kashirya, I know what's the pasuk. The pasuk describes in the positive sense that a person's wearing armor made of a male armor, like a scaled armor. And the Alter Rebbe explained that it's similar to that which Rambam writes about Hakol Fi Reva Maisa, the Mishnah which says that a person is judged based on the amount of action, not on the quality of one action, but the amount of actions taken. So the Rambam explains, as an example, it's talking about tzedakah, where a person can give $1 million in one check, or he can break it up into, over a year, give a bunch of checks every single day that equal the same amount. So the latter is a greater
It's greater to spread.
greater act, yes, because there's more actions of mitzvah.
Right.
Hakol Fi Reva Maisa. It all follows the amount of action. So the Alter Rebbe writes about this at length, and the Rebbe was very into this. For example, the Rebbe actually founded something called Keren Hashana. It still runs till today. Keren Hashana, which means the Keren is like a foundation, a yearly foundation. And what it is you give charity at the beginning of the year. You send them $200, $300, whatever it is. They take your charity, break it up to the amount of the days of the year, and every single day give charity on your behalf. Friday afternoon and then Saturday night, and then Erev Yom Tif, they'll give extra for the 2 days Yom Tif that they don't actually give on Yom Tif, but that way every single day of the year you're giving a tzedakah. It's because of this idea. Hakol Fi Reva Maisa, everything follows the amount of action. And the Alter Rebbe compares this to the scaled armor, because you have a bunch of different, it's supposed to one big piece is shielding you, you have a bunch of small little pieces shielding you. It's the same amount of, it's the same, same circumference of metal, but instead of one plate, it's a bunch of plates. So likewise, it's the same amount of tzedakah, but it's broken up into different actions, implying a different. The virtue of it is that it's not just about giving, but it's about the exercise of giving. So
Same. You can use the analogy right down to food. Like if you make a chicken on like Shabbat,
yeah,
you can eat the whole thing tonight and be stuffed and full.
Or break it up like a mensch and eat.
Or break it up and you'll have a little bit left over for tomorrow and a little bit left over for Sunday and a little bit, and you have a little bit every day. But
it's a healthier way, yeah. So what's tzedakah? That's the idea. Is you build the giving muscle. It's important to exercise that muscle, and every day you give something, and that's connected to this idea of the male, the scaled armor. So it's another idea. I'm just throwing it out there, but you can think of how you. Sorry.
Creating habit.
That's what I'm saying. You create habit by exercising that muscle.
Right.
As opposed to you broke yourself once, gave it, now you're back to yourself of not giving. But rather give every day. It's an exercise, giving every day. All right. So maybe these are connected. I'm just putting these ideas out there, and you could think of it yourself, put more thought into it. That's what it is. Okay. So that was Yehuda Marav, which gave these specific numbers and how they repeat themselves. Avram Avinu, Sanhedrin, and then Gog and Magog. The exact numbers here with their descriptions. In the Mishnah it was taught, so Yehuda Marav is a sage of the Gemara's age, of the third generation probably, because he's speaking in the name of Rav. So it's probably the third generation of Amoraim, of Gemara age sages, Rabbi Yochanan Rav Yehuda. And now the Gemara is quoting a text from the Mishnaic age, which reads, Oirach Machaneu, the length of his camp, how long his camp, how much space it took, was Arba Meis Parsa, 400 Parsa. What's a Parsa? Parsa is 4 mil. What's mil? A mil is a bit bigger than a kilometer. So a Parsa is about 4 or 5 kilometers, somewhere between there. So let's just say it's 5, make it easier number. Let's say Parsa is 5 kilometers. And it says here it's 400 Parsa. So we're talking about 2,000 kilometers. That's how big his camp was.
2,000
kilometers. Right? If a parsa is 5 kilometers and it's 400, so it's 400 times 5. It's 2,000, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not an accountant, but that's very
huge.
big. It's huge, yes. So, is this literally the exact number? Or is the Gemara specifically using this number because there's a message here? Leave that to you.
2,000 kilometers is from here to Florida.
Yeah. I don't think it fits in Israel. It means if he was camped outside Jerusalem with 2,000 kilometers, it'd be extending way past Tzfat.
Yeah, that's...
It's a big number.
2,000 kilometers is from here.
It's not to Florida.
Almost to Florida?
No.
No.
Florida, you're talking in miles.
Florida is 1,500 miles.
It's 1,800 miles.
So how many kilometers is that?
1,200 miles.
So it's not from here to Florida, it's from here to Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's far enough.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what I'm saying. If it's literally exactly this is what it was, or the Gemara is specifically using these numbers to give you a message, there's a Rav Shmuel Nugget in his introduction to the Gemara writes that after a certain number, you should know the Gemara is exaggerating. It shouldn't be taken exactly literally. I can't remember exactly what number he gave. But either way, when the Gemara uses a number, even though it might be in a literal sense an exaggeration, but the Gemara is giving a number because the number has a meaning. As I mentioned before, 45,000 could be connected to the name of Ma, and 2,000 could be connected to some other number. I'm not a big numerologist, but those who study this stuff can tell you what these numbers signify. But certainly there's significance. Okay, so his camp is 400. Right, the significance is not 2,000 kilometers. The significance is 400 parsa. That's the significance. And the significance is the number 400. Like Esav comes with 400 men.
Right.
There's something about 400 in the opposition. Now, Roichav Savor Susov, his cavalry, the horses lined up one next to another. Their shoulders, shoulder to shoulder, spread Arboyim Parsoi, 40 parsa. So again, if each parsa is 5 kilometers, 40 parsa is 40 times 5 is 200 kilometers. So 200 kilometers of horses.
That's from here to Ottawa.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So again, obviously these numbers have significance. Okay, so 400. So again, it's 4. They're both 4. One's 40. One's 400 parsa, and one's 40. But again, it's sticking with the number 4 here for some reason.
Where do you get a field that big?
Yeah. I don't know if it's literally like this, but these numbers are significant, even if it's not literally to what happened. Okay, Sach Machaneu, the sum total of the amount of people in his army were Masayim v'Shishim Riboy, 260,000. Masayim v'Shishim Riboy Alofim, so 260,000. Chaser Chad minus 1. So 259,000, 200, I'm going to say it, 259,000, 9,999.
Yeah. Well, one guy got sick that day.
Yeah, one guy. Okay, but the Gemara says, Chaser Chad, minus 1. But minus 1 what? So I just gave the number minus 1 person. Morning.
Minus 1 horse.
So it could be so let's see. So Baya asked, Chaser Chad Riboy is a minus 1 Riboy. A Riboy is 10,000. Or Chaser Chad Alpha is a minus 1,000. Right? Because the Gemara gives 3 numbers. We have numbers divided in tens, right? So we have 10, 100, 1,000, and that's our highest unit. In Lashon HaKodesh, you have 1, you have 10, you have tens, like 10, 20, 30, you have hundreds, you have thousands, and then you have 10,000. 10,000 is a unit, which is its own name, Riboy. It's its own name. So when the Gemara, when the Mishnah listed the number of his soldiers, it gave in the units of 100, and then in the unit of 1,000, and it gave in the unit of 10,000. So when the Mishnah said minus 1, minus what? Minus which unit? Minus one person, or minus a unit of the other thing? So minus 1,000, minus 10,000. So which one is it? So is it Chaser Chad Riboy? Is it missing minus 1 unit to 10,000? So it's 260,000 minus 10,000. Or Chaser Chad Alpha, or is it minus a unit of 1,000? Or Chaser Mei, or is it minus a unit of 100? Or Chaser Chad, or actually just missing 1, like we described earlier. Does the Gemara take it? We don't know. So when the Gemara is asking such specific questions, you can see clearly that there's deeper significance here. Sabai is asking, like, what does he care if it's minus 1 or minus 10 or minus 100, minus, like, whatever. There's a lot of people. Who cares? Like, does it really matter to an army if you're faced with 260,000 or 259,999, or if it's 9,990 or 9,900? Like, it doesn't make that much of a difference if you're facing such a massive army. But for Abaye, it matters because these numbers are significant in terms of what their messaging is. He wants to know exactly. And the Gemara concludes it doesn't know, as if to say there's an option for all of them. So again, think about these numbers and what they mean. And Michael Chernak's a numerologist. He can help us, but he's not here today. Anyway. Okay, now the Gemara makes another comment. Now this comment is a little easier for me to dissect in terms of its spiritual messaging. It's a little bit easier to understand, to think about how to interpret it. But let's see the literal meaning first. Tana the Mishnah reads, Mishnah H text. Rishonim, we mentioned once before that Sanhedrin came with 3 times three attempts to attack Eretz Yisrael. So it seems like this is what it's talking about, the three different attempts. Or it could be it's three different units within the same attempt. I'm not sure which one it is. But there's three different units of Sanhedrin soldiers entering Eretz Yisrael, crossing the Jordan. And it says it like this. Rishon in the first group, Avru B'Shechi. They went through swimming. Did they swim? Or Ragashi says the horses swam, but they swam. Shenemar, as the verse reads, V'chalaf Yehuda, and they passed over Judah. That's the north. Shata fa'avar. They passed over and the water overflowed. Meaning to say that they went through the water. There was a big body of water which they went through, and the water overflowed. So as they go through and the water overflows, the river depletes. Right? So I'm saying the next group, the middle group, doesn't have to swim anymore because the water is lower. So Avru B'Kaima, they just walked standing. The water came up to their shoulder. Shneimar, the verse reads, At Savar Yagia. Up until the shoulder, it came. The water, I suppose. So the first group goes through their swimming, but the water depletes. The second group walks with the water to their shoulder. Achran, in the last group, the third group, Hello Afar B'Ragleim, their feet, mud was rising up with their feet. And when you walk on sand, some sand pops up. So the earth is popping up. And with so little water, it was completely depleted, they couldn't find anything to drink. To the point that they bring it from somewhere else, for and then they can drink. Shnemar, as the verse reads, I dug, and I found water. Implying that the water wasn't available, you had to go dig the water. If they're walking through a river, why don't you just drink the water right there? Thus implying there's one group who didn't have any water left. Okay, so this is the end of the text. That's the literal meaning. So I think over here it's a little easier to interpret it on its spiritual level, and that perhaps it's like we're talking about the invading force there, Yisrael, so we're talking about the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And the tactic of the evil inclination is, the first time around, tells you to do a sin. It's very difficult to do the sin. You feel weird, you feel awkward about it, and but it pushes you to do it. You just swim across to get it. The second time, okay, I messed up twice, but I'm still an okay guy. And the third time, now all of a sudden you feel comfortable. I'm a sinner anyway. And it becomes easier. You're walking through on dry land to that sin. It's the Yitzhara's tactic. In fact, the Alter writes in Ger Satshuva, quoting the Zohar, little context. The Alter was talking about different customs of different views of how much a person should fast. The Arizal, I'm not going to get into the whole pilpul, but the Arizal writes in different Sfarim, Sefer Chassidim and others, Sefer Yereim, write about different amount of fasts for different sins that a person should fast. As a rule, before I go further, you should know that the Alter writes at the end that today, a person should pay tzedakah rather than fast. Don't fast for your sins. It's just going to make you worse off. In the old generation, fasting meant more prayer. Today, fasting means more time spending watching entertainment on screen. So ignore that and just give tzedakah better, unless you feel like you're the kind of person who can fast for days and still pray properly. But at any rate, the Alter was discussing the different views about fasting for different amount of sins. I'm just giving an example. Let's just say a certain sin is worth 50 fasts, and the person did the sin 10 times. So how many fasts should he do? Just 50? Or 50 times 10, because they did the sin 10 times. There's two different views. And the Alter writes that the consensus is you do 3 times the number of fasts, not past that. Why? Quoting the Zohar. So Zohar says that when a person does a sin one time, the stain only touches one side. When he does it the second time, the stain goes through a bit more. And the third time, the stain goes from one end to the other. So if you're thinking about a cloth, and you drop a stain, so you flip the cloth over, you don't necessarily see the stain. You drop it again, you may not, but it's gone through a bit more. And then you drop the same stain again, and the third time, it's going to go all the way through. So now, every time you drop that stain onto the cloth, it's not changing the stain on the cloth. It's the same stain because it's gone through and through. That's what the Zohar says. And therefore, says Alter Rebbe, the consensus is 3 times and that's enough. And the psychological logic is, like I just said, once you do something 3 times, you've already accepted that that's who I am. When you do it one time, person does a sin one time, you feel like, okay, I messed up, but I'm okay. Do it a second time, it becomes a little bit easier to do the sin, but you still feel like it's not really who I am. Once a person does it 3 times, it's just who I am and leaves it alone. So here we're talking about Sanhedrin invading. A person should be wary of the Yetzer Hara's tactic.
Strength.
The first time tells you it's very difficult, but you'll do it, it's okay. You still have water in your river, you're okay. But the river went down, the river got lower, the resistance to the Yetzer Hara got a little lower. And by the time you're doing it 3 times, there's no resistance anymore because you've accepted who you are. And know this the first time it comes to you. That even if a person failed in sin, don't let the waters deplete. Don't lower your resistance just because you once did a sin. Say, no, there's a mistake, it's not who I am, and keep your river high, keep your water running high. Perhaps that's the deeper meaning here.
But if you keep on, you keep breaking the strand on your attachment to God.
That's what tshuva is for. That's what tshuva is for.
Well, if the guy does tshuva.
Yeah.
But if he
That's what I'm
says, "That's
saying.
me," he's not gonna
So
do
if you're
tshuva.
aware of the tactic before you start, you have a better... once the tactic is exposed, you need your time combating it.
Right.
Right? If you don't know your enemy's tactics, it becomes hard to... So you don't know how the Yitzhar operates, it's hard to... But knowing how the Yitzhar tries to chip away at you slowly, you know to push back as soon as the guard starts going down, you say, oh, I'm going the wrong track.
That's right.
Put the guard back up. As opposed to saying, it's not so bad, okay, it just went down from up here to down here, but it's okay. Because slowly it's going to...
It's the same. It's the same principle on the flip side, like on the positive. Like, let's say, I don't know what it's called. I've heard what it's called, but let's say a person who never comes to shul. Let's say they come 3 times Shabbos in a row.
Yeah.
There's a saying for that.
Chazaka.
Right. Like it's written in stone that.
Yeah, it comes from the laws of vows, actually.
Okay, so is what you're saying now? This is the same.
This is the reverse side of that. Could
This
be
is the reverse side, but it's the same
principle.
Same principle, but on the negative.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So one more final comment from the Gemara. The Gemara says like this. So we just gave a bunch of numbers before to the size of the encampment. Both the distance of how much it took up from the Mishnah and then from the Huda Barav, which gave us exact numbers, 45,000 and then 80,000 and then 60,000. So the Gemara asks, but the verse reads, literally the verse which describes the night that the angel strikes Sanhedrin and his army. So the verse reads, Vayetze Malach Hashem, an angel of God went out the night before his planned attack, which is the night of the Pesach, as we talked about before. Vayakin of Macha Asher, and struck in the Assyrian camp, Sanhedrin's army. How many? Meo Shmoinem V'chamishim Elef, 185,000. Gives it a specific number. So why are you adding all these numbers? 405,000, 80,000. The verse reads.
And those would equal 185, by the way.
Sorry?
The first 3 would equal 185.
But it adds more.
But the 260 is a problem, but the first 3 would be okay.
The first one would be okay, but even
Yeah,
the first one, because it says
45.
Vashar Proshim, the rest of them were cavalry.
Right, I'm saying ignoring that. Yeah, those numbers fit, but that's the Prussian, I agree.
Right, but the Gemara adds that the numbers itself fit, but the Gemara adds that there's more people.
Yes.
But anyway, the second one, which has 260,000
That wouldn't fit.
minus one unit, minus one person, whatever it is, doesn't match up with the Gemara. But even beyond that, why are you giving me all these numbers when the verse gives a number? Like, why are you giving me numbers? Anyway, the verse reads, Vayashkimu, when the people woke up next morning, Babaker, Vahine, Kulam, Pagara Basin, they see them all dead corpses. So it seems to be contradiction. We have these traditions from the Mishnah, from the Gemara's time, that give us very specific numbers, breaking down the army, and here the verse gives a different number. So Amar Babo says, Halalu, these mentioned in the verse, this 185,000, Rosh Gaisasen, they were each the leaders of a regiment or a unit. But under their rulership there was even more. And that's the way we reconcile the different traditions. Which means that only the leaders of each regiment were killed. Not everybody.
That's the most important.
It's the most important. And those leaders were 185,000. Which is a huge amount, obviously. So Amar Ravashi says, Daikanami, even before you get to the tradition that we had that the number was much bigger, look at the verse itself. You'll see that it's implicated there that the people who were killed were leaders. In the verse itself. How so? Because the verse reads, the mashman of Rozan, that God brought in their fat leanness. That's to say, reduce them. So the language is, in their fat, he brought leanness. Bishminim de isbu, in their fat ones, in their most choice soldiers, that's where they were struck. As if to say, not everybody got struck, only their fat ones got struck, only the leaders got struck. So you see, even the verse itself implies that there were others who weren't struck, and it was the leaders who were struck. And likewise, Amar Ravina says, likewise, Dikanami. You can look at the verse itself and see that the verse is specifically speaking about the leaders and not everybody. How is that? Because the verse reads, Vayechelek Hashem Malach, and God sent an angel. Vayikrat kol giber chayil, v'nogid, v'sar b'machanachulu. And this angel struck all these valiant soldiers. And Nogid is like a leader or a prince. The Sar is a minister in the camp of Asur. Here the verse explicitly states that those who were struck were valiant to strength, ministers, and thus leaders. And therefore, there were more that were survived. But that same verse concludes, and the rest of the verse is a segue to the next Gemara, but here the verse concludes, Vayava Beis Elakav, and Sanhedrin went back home, and he went to pray to his own gods. Umeitziye Meyav, and his own offspring, Sham there, he Pilu B'cherev murdered him. In other words, he came back a failure, so his children killed him, and they took over Syria, which soon fell apart anyway. So Shema Mina, the implication from the verses are that it wasn't everybody who was struck, but rather just the leaders. And therefore the numbers described in the verse are specifically leaders, and there are other numbers that are more than that. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll get to two very interesting things. Number one is how exactly the angel struck them. And similar to today, we're giving all these numbers which seem like arbitrary, but obviously there's deeper significance. Likewise, the Gemara is going to talk about exactly how the angel struck them in metaphorical language, I would assume. And then it's going to get to the survivors, Nebuchadnezzar and his children, and what that all is.
According to Rashi, the other ones died too, maybe different ways, though. And the Rashi on the right hand.
Which Rashi?
Side, the top one, right and left hand sides.
Halalo,
he did die, but they maybe died differently.
It's interesting that they all did die in the end.
Maybe different ways.
It would make sense that this is correct because the Gemara is going to go on to say that there's a very, very small number of survivors, which would mean everybody did die. So that's a good point. Rashi is saying that when the verse said that these amount died, it doesn't mean that they were the only ones to die, but they were the leaders who died. Everybody else also died, but in maybe some other fashion. Because the Gemara is going to go on to say tomorrow that there was like only 3 survivors, and the Gemara is going to identify who they were and what they did.
Levi, when God gives the angels the chore to do.
Yeah.
All right. So why can't God do it himself? Why does
Good
he have
question.
to go through an angel?
It's a good question. We mentioned the Gemara discussed it earlier about depending on the level of offense from the person who's being struck, he gets a different level of divine retribution.
But if God's putting all his energy into the angel,
It's all divine anyway. It's all God doing
the
it.
angel?
Of course he could. It's all God doing anyway. It's a question of God using this medium or that medium. A more direct medium or more indirect medium. Right? It's the sun rising is also God.
Yeah,
Right? But it's embedded in a whole system of nature.
But it's not
So-
an angel.
Right, but what is an angel?
An angel's not pushing the
Right, but
sun.
what it maybe it is actually, but what is an angel anyway? An angel is just
It's
an
an
extension of the
animal.
sorry?
It's an animal.
Yeah, but what is it? It's a little animal floating in the sky? No, it's a divine energy,
It's a divine energy.
essentially. But it's divine energy packaged in a certain way. Right? So it all comes from God anyway. The question is the packaging, how godliness, how God himself chooses to manifest his, whether it's in the system of nature, also referred to sometimes as angels, by the way, and or has it come more direct, obvious divine revelation, but it's all divine revelation. The question is through what medium, and it all depends on the person God's interacting with. In response to that person's interaction, God will manifest in that way, matching that person's behavior in the positive or negative. As the Gemara described a bit earlier.
Yeah, but then we had the Mark raised.
We had the Gemara earlier.
Why Sanhedrin was by
Because the way he treated God, that's how God treated him back. As opposed to Parai, who treated God differently, was treated, right? Parai insulted God directly, so God's retribution was direct. Sanhedrin insulted God through an agent, so God's retribution was through an agent. But the principle here is it's all God. It's just a question of through what medium this divine retribution or revelation manifests.
So an angel can come in it can come in a physical presence or in a spiritual in an energy presence. It
Certainly.
can come either.
Avram Avinu, they arrived physically, and in other cases it's more spiritual. As we'll see at the Gemara's tomorrow, it's going to be clear that it's spiritual. The Gemara's going to discuss what's a hand, a finger, this or that, which are obviously not literal, they're obviously metaphorical. We'll have to think about what they mean. Okay, wonderful day, everybody.
Okay.